Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are right in the midst of our very interesting conversation with Bapsi Sidhwa about her novels. And before we went on the break, we were about to commence our discussion on her famous Partition novel. This is the novel about which a very well-known movie called Earth 1947. This movie was based on the book, and I asked you to think about this novel on which inspired the movie. And I am sure that you will have guessed that this is nothing else but The Ice Candy Man. Ice Candy Man is one of my favorite books. If I were to select two, I would go in for Crow Eaters and Ice Candy Man. And something, Tayyiba, you started by saying that you were very moved by her writing, Bapsi's writing, because you found it to be very unpretentious. And can you explain what you mean by that?
I find Bapsi's writing is not contrived like a lot of other people that I have read. It's very natural. It flows very naturally. You can see the ease with which Bapsi is relating the story. It's not contrived. It's not worked on hard. So that's why it's so much easier to read.
That's right.
It's a very natural form of writing, and that's why it sort of talks to me. It appeals to me.
So it is very readable, but what I am
readable.
intrigued is that it must have been difficult to write, especially a story like Ice Candy Man, because you are taking on very serious and even difficult themes.
Ice Candy Man was the most difficult book for me to write. I started with several starts, and suddenly I hit upon the child's voice, a Parsi child's voice, and it was the present tense. And I started off with "My world is compressed," and I wrote the first paragraph, and I felt this is what I want to talk and how I want to talk.
So it was the first paragraph which was the most difficult for you?
No, to find it. But once I found it, I find usually that the first paragraph for me, the first chapter, contains the whole DNA of the novel, which then flows out of it. It sets the tone, it sets the thought, and then the book flows out of it.
So, Amina, you were commenting on the picture of Lahore in the Crow Eaters. I think this book focuses on Lahore in a much more dramatic way, and I wonder how you react to that.
Well, somehow I find, having read the Ice Candy Man, and especially the descriptions of the servants and the barbers and all the people, of course, the godmother was also a lovable character. But when I was recently, I read that some years ago. After that, when I was reading Danyal Moinuddin's Other Rooms, Other Wonders, I found a connection, because very few people have written about people from the class of people that Bapsi covered. Again, she was a trailblazer in this. It was the first time that she wrote about people from that background, about the Ayah and about the Ayah's friends, and of course the Ice Candy Man. And after that, I read about the same class of people in Danyal Moinuddin's. So I think really it was something quite unique, and the first time that these people had been covered, and with so much affection, with they were written
with
about
sympathy.
Yes, and also it was as Tayyiba said, it wasn't contrived at all. To me it seemed like the first draft, which I feel is the best part. It was a spontaneous writing of those people. It wasn't, I could tell that it hasn't been revised or rewritten or polished. It just came straight from the heart, and that's what made it so strong and so powerful.
And this book could also have been the starting point for her anthology of writings about Lahore, because Lahore almost seems to be like a character in the novel. Would you agree with that?
Well, it's a character in all my novels, even in An American Brat, except for Water, which is of course set in Banaras. This is, every novel of mine is set, Lahore plays a very large part in it.
So, apart from the fact that you grew up in the city, what do you bring out of Lahore? What are the interesting characteristics that you want to depict?
Well, whatever the atmosphere around me was, and I don't want to depict something, it automatically grows out of the characters. If there are Parsi characters, there's a different point of view. When there are non-Parsi characters, Punjabi characters, the voice changes. With Punjabi characters, it becomes funny. With Parsi characters, it becomes funny. With Urdu-speaking characters, it becomes more serious. You know, so they dictate what I write about. And it's the most popular book in America. It's taught in
Ice
almost…
Candy Man.
Yes. It's called Cracking India out there.
That's right.
And it's taught in every university, high school, you know, it's just taught a lot. And I feel a little sorry because it has drowned out the Crow Eaters. Nobody knows that book. They all seem to know Cracking India, yeah.
Is it because it also focuses on the theme of partition, and that is something which interests a lot of readers, especially from those who are not South Asian?
Partly, yes, it teaches us about, you know, people about the history of that part of the world in an entertaining fashion, you know, and it reflects, I think, a very fair account of the partition being recounted by a Parsi child, you know, and it gives people an introduction to a very different part of the world, which they want to, you know, they have these classes for out of the states languages and things like that. I forget the name, the technical name of that. And they have it in those classes,
That's
in
right.
English literary classes, in various classes.
But I can see that you have a great deal of partiality towards the Crow Eaters.
Well, I really can't say that because each of them is like my child. And they each have their strengths and their weaknesses. And I like them all, but I like the Crow Eaters because it's very funny and I can still read it again, you know. I love reading out passages from it. And I don't read out when I'm given, you know, called to colleges to read. I usually read the funny passages even from Ice Candy Man, from An American Brat, from all the…
But I can see that it's a favorite child.
Well,
We
they're all, yeah.
Okay, we started by talking about The Bride, we talked about the Crow Eaters, and we moved on to the Ice Candy Man. I had wanted to ask about the next novel, but you mentioned this in the conversation, and I want people to recall the name of your next novel, which you just mentioned in the conversation, your fourth novel, Bapsi Sidhwa's fourth novel. Think about that name, which you just heard, I'm sure, but you have to now connect with that book while we are going to take a very quick break. Don't go away, we are going to be back.